Hey students, we're going to start photosynthesis in this video, so we'll introduce it. Let's get started with our PowerPoint from our PowerPoint series. This is chapter 10. We'll introduce the topic of photosynthesis and, let me get this bigger, and then we will talk about the mechanisms of photosynthesis. These are the big, this is the big component of chapter 10. So before we get started, true or false? Because plants photosynthesize, their cells don't need to make ATP by cellular respiration or fermentation. Because they're photosynthesizing, right? They're making their own sugar. Well, what's the actual answer here? The answer is definitely false. Plants and other organisms that photosynthesize can make their own sugar. That's fantastic. They can grab carbon dioxide and light energy and make organic sugars. But they still need ATP to do all of their cellular work. So you have to convert those sugars into ATP by cellular respiration and fermentation. So the answer is definitely false here. So what is photosynthesis? What's the simplest definition? Well, it's the conversion of light energy into chemical energy or into sugars, right? So you can put these in, the conversion of light energy into chemical energy or into sugars, right? If we need to summarize photosynthesis, we can do it in one big equation, just like we did with aerobic cellular respiration. Again, this is a summary equation. Photosynthesis doesn't happen in a one-step process. It's a multiple-step process with complex components, but we can summarize it. So here's our summary. Let's look at this summary equation. 6 carbon dioxide plus 6 water are needed and light energy to make C6H12O6. Oh, hey, that's sugar, glucose, right? Plus oxygen. Hey, there's our happy byproduct of photosynthesis right there. And some water. Whoops, this isn't right. We're going to have to scratch that off. Actually, 12 waters are needed and 6 are made. So if we balance the equation, we have to scratch off water over there, okay? What we can say about this reaction is that in the reaction, this summary equation is a redox reaction. Carbon dioxide is reduced to a sugar, and water is split or oxidized. So carbon is reduced. That means it's going to pick up electrons to make the sugar, and water is oxidized. It's going to lose electrons. It's going to be split, and we're going to have oxygen as a byproduct. All right? So this reaction looks a little bit like the summary equation for aerobic cellular respiration. But in aerobic cellular respiration, the equation went the other way. Remember? Oxygen plus sugar produces water, carbon dioxide, and energy in the form of ATP. So interestingly, the summary equation for photosynthesis is essentially the reverse of the summary equation for cellular respiration. This time we're going to take a look at how organisms can grab carbon dioxide and use light energy to make sugar. And oxygen pops out as a byproduct. So what kind of organisms photosynthesize? Well, organisms that photosynthesize are called Photoautotrophs. Photoautotrophs. This is kind of a two-part name. Organisms are phototrophs. Troph means to feed. Phototroph means that they're going to use light as their source of energy. But they're also autotrophs. And an autotroph, it can take inorganic molecules and make them into organic ones. So organisms that photosynthesize can grab carbon dioxide from the air somehow and make it into sugars, organic molecules. So these guys, organisms that photosynthesize, are photoautotrophs. We're obviously not photoautotrophs. We're what we call chemoheterotrophs. Chemo means we get our energy from chemicals, and heterotroph means we're other feeders. We can't make organic molecules from carbon dioxide. We have to make organic molecules from other organic molecules. So we're we're chemoheterotrophs. All right, well, let's look at some examples of photosynthesizers that are photoautotrophs. Well, clearly we've got plants, right? Algae. So the things that you see in ponds, scum on the surface of ponds. We've got other eukaryotes that are single-celled. They used to be in the category protists. And we've got some bacteria that are photosynthesizers. They probably don't have, I know they don't have, the chloroplasts, where photosynthesis happens in eukaryotes, but they have the equipment to do photosynthesis. They were probably our earliest photosynthesizers, these single-celled bacteria doing the work of photosynthesis, making sugars from carbon dioxide and producing oxygen as a byproduct. So we're going to focus on the mechanisms of photosynthesis in eukaryotes, in particular in plants, okay? So we're going to look at eukaryotes. We're going to look in specific at plants. And the first thing we want to know is, well, where is photosynthesis happening? Most of the time, photosynthesis is happening in leaves, in organelles called chloroplasts, right? Chloroplasts are found in a particular kind of cells called mesophyll cells. Mesophyll cells in plants, all right? And we're going to take a look at these chloroplasts on the next slide, but usually in these cells there are about 20 to 100 chloroplasts per cell. This is just a picture of what we used to see in lab when we went to lab in person. These are Elodea cells, a small plant that lives in the water, and you can see all the green circles are chloroplasts. These are where photosynthesis is happening. Now, if we look at a plant from your yard, a maple or a cherry tree or whatever you've got, and we look at a leaf, we can look at its cross-section and we can see that it's kind of complicated, right? It's got a row of epidermal cells on the top and the bottom. It's got cells in the middle that are called the mesophyll cells, and look at all those green dots in them. Those green dots are the chloroplasts. And then it's got some equipment for moving around water and sugars through the vein, right, of a leaf. When we look at the chloroplasts, this is material from chapter 6. When we look at the chloroplast, each chloroplast has a double membrane around it. Okay? It's one of those double membrane structures. And then it has a fluid-like material called the stroma. And in the stroma are little green sacs called thylakoid sacs. Thylakoid sacs that are usually stacked up in little stacks called grana or granum. And so you see lots and lots of those little green thylakoid sacs inside a single chloroplast, and lots of chloroplasts inside a single cell. This is where photosynthesis is going to happen, in our chloroplasts. Here is an overview of photosynthesis, and it's one of these figures that I kind of like to memorize because it helps me understand the big picture of photosynthesis, right? So it's a nice overview. What we're looking at here, whenever I look at a figure, I have to stop and think, what am I looking at? What I'm looking at is one chloroplast with the double membrane around it. So we're looking at what's happening inside one chloroplast. I see these green stacked up thylakoid sacs, and I see the stroma, kind of this is just representing the stroma, and these thylakoid sacs here, I'm just going to write thylakoid sacs for TS. Okay? What I see right away is that it looks like photosynthesis is divided into two phases, if you will, the light reactions and the Kelvin cycle. The light reactions seem to be happening in the thylakoid sacs. The Kelvin cycle seems to be happening out there in the stroma. And let me think. It looks like in the light reactions, light energy, that's what that yellow arrow must mean, is being used, and water is being used. And here's what we're making. We're making ATP, something called NADPH. That looks a lot like NADH. I wonder if it's an electron carrier, like NADH is. It is. Okay. And we're making some byproduct oxygen. That's our byproduct there, right? And now it looks like after we take light energy, after plants do it, and make ATP and NADPH, we then use ATP and NADH in the Kelvin cycle, which must be a series of reactions that occur in a cycle. In this process, we grab carbon dioxide into the cycle. We fix it or put it into an organic molecule. That's what plants can do. We can't do that. And make a sugar along the way. It looks like ATP and NADPH are used up during the Kelvin cycle, and we recycle their parts. They go back to be used in the light reactions. So this is complicated. I'm guessing it's going to take a while to explain. Sure, it will. We're going to talk about that in the next video. That's it.